Hey everybody, welcome to the Rich State of Mind YouTube channel. In this video, we'll be talking about how to handle inheriting tenants. So when you're buying a new property, right, you're doing your numbers, you're looking at how much the house is worth, you're looking at the rent rolls, you're looking at, what is the tenant situation, current situation, are they paying their rent, how much they're paying rent for, all that stuff. So it's a good thing for a landlord or a real estate investor when they're buying a property that tenant's already in there. It can be good, but it also could be bad. But generally for me, I'm like, okay, good. There's tenants in there. That means this place is livable for the most part, right? Some people, they suffer in silence. But so talking to the owner, they say, hey, I have tenants in there. Let's say I'm looking at a duplex. All right, great. Two tenants are in there. First thing I'm asking for is the rent rolls. When I look at the rent rolls, I want to see what their rent is. And I also want to see have they been late on any of their payments. I also want to see what is the last 6 months of maintenance that they've been, maintenance calls that they've been putting in. So, but getting a little ahead of myself. So rent rolls, looking to see what the rent that they are submitting. I also want to look at the lease. Okay, there's been multiple times where I've looked at the lease and I look at the rent rolls. The leases say $1,000, the rent rolls will say 800. So that's, red flag to me. So I ask the question, what's going on? And usually I get some excuse as to it's some verbal agreement between the landlord and the tenant. I don't like verbal agreements. I want things that's on paper. If you have a lease set in place, then that's what you go by. So for whatever reason, they have a verbal agreement. Maybe that's all the tenant said that they can afford. For me, especially if I set the rent at a certain level, it's probably because I'm looking for a particular amount of cash flow. I'm not looking to be negative every month. So what you can do is somebody that's in the process of purchasing the property, you can do an Estoppel agreement with that tenant. That this agreement is pretty much you in the current tenant have an agreement of what they actually pay at that time. So they're going to say, hey, I'm paying 800. Utilities are on the water is on the owner, but I pay the electricity. You have them sign it, you sign it, you keep that so that when you buy the property, you can use that as a legal document saying, hey, look, you said that these were your responsibilities. Now, all of a sudden, when I took over the property, now you're saying these are not your responsibilities. So definitely, I'll leave a link in the description below of the article that I written on this program or on this topic. And also in that article, you will see a PDF file for that agreement so that you can see the examples of what you need to put inside that agreement. So also what you need to do when you inherit these tenants, this is after you've purchased a property, you need to set new standards. So like I said earlier, maybe that tenant had verbal agreements with the old landlord, but like I said, a smart landlord never does that. There's no verbal agreements. Everything's in writing. So you need to set a new standard, and that new standard needs to be in writing, whether it be by new lease when their lease is up and time to renew, because sometimes you'll catch people on a month-to-month lease, right? So that's a perfect opportunity to do a new lease that's for a year or 6 months or 18 months, whatever works in your favor. But you also could send out a, welcome letter. It doesn't have to be like, these are my commandments and you must go by them when you're done. But that standard could be a soft standard where it's not so intimidating, but hey, look, these are the things that we go by. This is how we do business. We're looking very forward to working with you, so on and so forth. So setting that new standard is definitely key, because you don't want the tenant to carry over bad habits that they were doing with the old landlord. That's going to cause a headache for you, especially if you run a tight ship and you like things that have some type of structure to it, and cash flow is not leaking out of you on a month-to-month basis. Worst case scenario, though, if you do inherit the tenant and you realize you don't like what they're doing, y'all are not meshing well at all, they're not living up to your standards, then you can pay them out. You can come up with an amount that you feel like will work best between you and the tenant to pay them off so that they will leave the apartment. This is also called cash for keys. So not something that everybody would want to do, but if you see yourself losing more money than you would if you were to keep them, the advice just paying them maybe $2,000 for them to leave. then that might be your best bet. Because if you see your property has a lot of potential and they're just bringing it down, that's something that I will look into doing. Like I said, it's not going to be the first, thought a lot of people would want to do, but you got to think about the longevity, right? You make most of your money by retaining tenants long term. And if you know you're not going to keep this tenant long term, then there's no point in, them sticking around. Even if it is, they pay rent, but then they're damaging the carpet, that's going to be 3,000. And the paint, there's writing all over the wall. All right, that's a couple thousand. So, you got to kind of weigh your options, do your math, and make sure that it all adds up before you do something like that. But there's been a couple tenants personally I've had that I was willing to do that for, because weighing out the options. So in closing, think about it. Think about the Estoppel agreement. Think about the rent rolls. Think about setting new standards. Think about cash for keys. These are things that you need to take into consideration when you inherit tenants. I like to inherit tenants and I like to work with them because it's obviously rent that I'm going to receive as soon as I take over a home. But there are prerequisites to make sure that these people are not headaches and that you and the tenant are on the same page when you take over as a new landlord. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe. Please like this video and please hit the bell for any future notifications for any future videos that we have. Thank you.